Good evening, everybody. I'm excited that everyone made it out through the rain. You don't look nearly as soaked as I do, so welcome. My name is Ruben Agbana, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that trains underserved youth here in Brooklyn. Had a code, and we placed them in junior software engineering jobs. Any people who are interested in diversifying tech, finding talent for your engineering teams, would love to connect. But super excited to be moderating this discussion. We have three wonderful people who are doing really innovative things at the intersection of blockchain and payments, and I'm excited to introduce them. To my left, we have Tammy Camp, and she is the founder and CEO of Stronghold. Everybody give Tammy Camp a round of applause. We have Max Krohn, who is the co-founder and CEO of Keybase. And last but not least, we have Vanessa Pestritto, and she is the Director of Strategic Growth at Xpring, which is a Ripple company. So I'm going to pass it off to my wonderful panelists. And the first question here, a quick bit about yourself, how you got to where you are. And the question is, describe what your company does and the problem that it solves for your customers. We can start with you, Vanessa.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Pestritto. I'm at Xpring, which is actually a business unit at Ripple. So we are Ripple employees. Ripple is in the business of solving the problem of cross-border payments for banks and financial institutions, and they help making it possible to move money around the world. Xpring is focused on making investments in blockchain companies and developer projects that are focused on the future of blockchain as a whole. There's no requirement to use anything related to Ripple products or services. This is truly an external effort focused on helping the ecosystem grow as a whole.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max. I'm the CEO of Keybase. So if I were to describe Keybase in 3 words, it would be end-to-end encrypted Slack. That's one of the features we're most excited about the product. But I guess in a little bit more detail, I think we're building foundational infrastructure that if you want to do anything useful in crypto that involves more than one person, you need Keybase or something like it. And there's a lot that goes into it. You need a way for people to advertise who they are effectively without being impersonated. You need a way for users to manage their private keys across multiple devices. There has to be a way to manage teams of people that can change over time. And then on top of that, you need great apps that people want to use. And so at Keybase, we're kind of building that whole stack from the bottom up. And so one of our features that we use all the time at our company, and we know other people use too, is like an end-to-end encrypted version of Slack or something that feels a lot like it. And we have other things too. And relevant to this conversation, we recently added a wallet feature, which allows people in their conversations with each other to send payments, cryptocurrency payments, where they control all the keys. So it's not like you're letting someone else do the transaction for you. Your transaction happens on your phone or on your desktop, wherever your Keybase application is running, and that's you sending money to someone else without any intermediation involved. So that's like one of these pure, exciting applications of crypto, and it's possible with a set of technologies that we've built.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Tammy Camp. I'm the CEO of Stronghold. We're a financial institution that allows fiat on-ramps to distribute for blockchain technologies such as Ripple and Stellar and Interledger. This is available via APIs, so developers, I think such as yourselves, can embed it into their applications and allow users to integrate with USD or we have 8 fiat currencies coming on board and reach different countries. But this basically allows users to interact with your ecosystem. So for example, if you have a cryptocurrency that is in your application, say like a poker or gaming site, you could take USD and change it to the poker chips, and then a player could basically play the game, and then once he's done, they could cash out of the poker chips back into USD, and then we send it to their bank account. So basically, we're a payments company.
Awesome. Thank you. The first question here is going to go to Max. And also want to plug the Slido with the hashtag blockchain. I'm going to be taking a peek at this tablet here, and any questions that you all have, I'm happy to include them in the conversation. First question for you, Max. You mentioned that Keybase for Teams, your product is like Slack, but with end-to-end encryption. Would love for you to expound upon what benefits that provides to your clients, your customers. Why might that be something they're looking for?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, and it kind of gets at a common confusion. So a lot of people who would use a product like Slack might think that, well, it's all in the cloud's secure, what do I have to worry about? And we might say that's potentially not the best idea, because I think what happens with a company like Slack, or maybe like a Dropbox, or anything where you are just, you do not have control over cryptographic keys, and you're just pushing your data onto the cloud. What happens is the service provider has access to this data in plain text form. And what that means is if there's somebody at the company who turns out to be a spy or careless, or if there's a high-profile breach, that means anything you've entrusted that service provider to hold on to might actually come out. And we know from reading the news media that this is not a hypothetical concern. It happens all the time. And I would maybe think that a Slack breach were to happen would be maybe a catastrophic event in a lot of ways. If you think about what people use this medium to talk about, they talk about things like salary negotiations, cap tables, all of the company's most sensitive secrets, probably API keys. It's all there in plain text. And so at Keybase, we kind of set out to solve that problem. And there's another solution to that problem too that we don't think is sufficient, and that could be like, imagine there was like a version of Slack you could like run on like a server in the closet in your office. And that some people say maybe this is better, that way it's all in the cloud. And we would argue that's also not a great solution, because probably there's somebody in your company who has to have access to that computer and apply patches and fix it when it breaks, and that person likely has access to all the important data that your company is exchanging too. And so that's probably not sufficient if the CEO is talking to the CFO about the earnings announcement, and the system administrator can read about it ahead of time. That would be a pretty bad solution as well. So we take the stance that everything is encrypted on your device, and it's decrypted on the device that it's intended for. And we have a lot of mechanisms around the fact that if we as a company turned evil, we could potentially inject spies into your group and you wouldn't notice. And so we have to make our clients robust to that scenario, that the phone on the app on your phone can actually tell, is there a fake user in this group that shouldn't be receiving the messages, and it would just kind of crash or not send secrets out. So that's kind of the landscape that we're trying to secure this data in. And it's a pretty challenging problem, but we hope that the application is like usable and feels almost as good as, or hopefully better than something like Slack. So that's the landscape, and it's getting better all the time, and we feel like it's really, for a lot of people, viable as an alternative.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Tammy, when we pre-briefed, I said, can I understand your company to be Stripe for cross-border payments and instant settlement? And you were like, yeah, sure, why not? In that respect, could you tell us about some of the pain points of cross-border transactions, particularly as it pertains to legacy platforms, and how do blockchain-based payments solve these challenges, or even specifically Stronghold and the API endpoints?
Sure. So to kind of preface the room, we're partnered with a company called IBM. I'm sure you know who that is. So what we do for them, they take blockchain technology and deploy it into financial institutions, and we act as the USD settlement layer between those financial institutions, which are all over the globe. Some are in Hong Kong, some are in Singapore, some are in Europe. And to that, what we're trying to disrupt is something called Correspondent Banking. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. Just a few of you. Well, it's a very, very inefficient, archaic way to move money. And basically what it's solving for are two things. One is certainty of time, so when it's going to show up. So typically when you send a wire now, if you're sending it to a more exotic country for a real estate closing, you wouldn't know when that wire is going to show up. It could show up 1 day from now, it could show up 5 days from now. You just don't know when it's going to show up. And by using these distributed ledger technologies, you can send it with certainty that it will show up in real time, 3 to 5 seconds later, and it will settle out. So that's one great use case for it. The second is certainty of cost. If you send, again, the scenario of you closing on a piece of real estate, so if you, say, send, a $100,000 wire, you don't know what's going to show up at the other end. It could be $99,000 and $500, and you just don't know, or it could be $99,700. So it solves for cutting out the middlemen, which are in this case are the correspondent banks, which kind of take a cut of the payment in each hop. They don't. Sometimes it's 2 correspondent banks, sometimes it's 3 correspondent banks, but by using these distributed ledger technologies, you know what the cost is going to be at the end destination, and so that's very, very powerful and very disruptive, and it will, people are kind of, financial institutions, all the way from, mom and pop money transmitter operators to banks, even central banks, are looking at these technologies and piloting them so they can make these systems a little more efficient and updated.
Thank you. Vanessa, FinTech is redefining speed, security, and efficiency. In your role at Xpring, could you tell us about some of the use cases or some of the general trends that excite you most?
Yeah, definitely. So from a industry standpoint, we believe that there's going to be multiple ledgers that will be used in different verticals, and we don't think just going to be one to serve them all. So when we take a look at different investments we'd like to make or people we'd like to partner with, we are looking at the infrastructure layer and seeing who also has the alignment of values in view of interoperability. I recently made an investment in Agoric, and that is a secure smart contracts platform that can integrate into other layer ones. And this is going to allow for the ability to integrate with those layer ones and also be able to eventually make cross payments into other chains. But that's deep and way ahead in the future, but that's how far ahead we're thinking. So that's one area. The next is decentralized finance. We've been spending a lot of time there at Xpring and taking a deeper look at where there might be some opportunities for new decentralized BitMEXs, right? Or what might a new derivatives exchange look like? And I've been spending my time there. We've also been spending time looking at new synthetics and some of the earlier DeFi companies. They've created a nice guild, is how I like to describe them. And so we've been closely working with them, talking with them, and seeing how we could be of service to them to help them progress along, because we believe it's going to be huge and that we're best collaborating with them up front. And then, of course, payments. Right. We also have someone on our team dedicated to seeing where XRP for payments can be of use and working with different merchants as well as consumers, platforms and apps to see where there could be a good opportunity for us there.
Awesome. Max, and this is inspired by a question that I have that came in through Slido. And you mentioned in your introduction that you just launched payments on Keybase for Teams. And I believe that's a result of a partnership with the Stellar Development Foundation. The question is, what is the customer segment that Keybase is targeting with respect to payments? And how might this support natively for a Stellar wallet, kind of spur growth in the blockchain space or for consumers?
Right. So the way we think of our payment feature is we like to think of it as either like a Venmo or an iPay type of experience. the key there is that it's something that's natural and makes sense in the context that it's being used. And so we just want a way for people on our app to send each other, currency. And we actually use it. When I buy my business partner salad for lunch, he'll pay me back with lumens. And the downside of that arrangement is that the value of the salad can change by 50%, I think, on a day-to-day basis. But assuming that's like a long-term problem we're going to solve, that's really the vision. And I think there are a lot of good things I can say about Stellar. And one of the things that we love about this feature is that it settles within 5 seconds or something like it. And so that it's a very neat feeling to just actually have the funds in the wallet on your phone within 5 seconds of someone sending it to you. It's if you think about like even the Venmo experience, yeah, sure, it shows up in your balance on Venmo right away after someone sends it to you. But if you actually want to get access to those funds, you have to clear it through your bank. That takes another couple of days or so. So it's like that's a lot of kind of lag. And the true power of this cryptocurrency innovation is that you actually, if you have the private key, you own the coin. And so that gives people this really neat feeling that they actually have the balance as soon as it's sent. So that's like the thing we're really hoping for, and obviously we hope to scale this up many times as we grow our platform and grow the business. And the other thing that's actually that we're experimenting a little bit is like how this might function as like a tipping feature. And so if you're in a group conversation and someone says something really interesting, you can almost like do the same thing as like Reddit Gold. I don't know if anyone has ever received or given Reddit Gold, but you could just say like, that was a really interesting like thing you just said, +2 XLM. And then it just like, not only do they get it, but everyone sees that they got it. So it's like a little bit of a viral loop that now people are like, exposed to this idea. So it's a really kind of, we think, fun integration in the app, and we've had a really successful partnership with SDF up to now, and we hope to keep that going forward, and that they're happy with what we're building.
Awesome. This question is related, and Vanessa, I definitely want you to answer, but Max and Tammy, feel free to jump in as well. So every time someone talks about blockchain, most of us hear some new technology or buzzword. No, don't want to go there yet, but I will. This is the question, sorry. How do you balance designing / marketing products for crypto-savvy early adopters versus more mainstream crypto newbie audiences? They have really different needs and also different channels to reach them. So in a sense, how do we make crypto or blockchain go mainstream?
So depending on the vertical, we've had some discussions, not just internally, but with some investor partners, and we even say, just don't mention it. For gaming, for instance, in some cases, you're not going to attract somebody to a new game by saying, hey, we have a blockchain game. No, you have a game, and it's awesome, and it happens to be running on blockchain. And you'll be able to have the assets that you're building in the game or actually own them, and that's what you should be marketing, that you're going to have true ownership of your new sword or shield, or maybe one day you could make an NFT out of a potion. Wouldn't that be fun? So things like that. On the finance side, if you're putting forward decentralized finance, new products and derivative synthetics, things like that, then you're going to go ahead and be much more transparent on that to the professional audience you're going with. But on the consumer side, I think there has to be an alignment of incentives and people getting what they want, because consumers, there's a lot of competition to get towards them. So in a lot of cases, you just may not have to mention it to them.
I think that's a great answer. I might kind of build on that a little bit. And obviously, Reddit Gold is known by like 100 million people, and this is like Reddit Gold, but like it actually, you could exchange it for real dollars. The other thing also that I could say is that like, if you think that like, Democrats and Republicans can't agree on anything, like, what about like people who like Bitcoin versus people who like Stellar? I mean, it's just like, there's just no common ground between those audiences. And so like, in some ways, maybe it's better you don't know anything about this, because then you won't come to the table with these entrenched views, which may be irrational. And so, as far as everyone's concerned, this is like some cool stuff that has value. And I think we can go from there. Not like, this technology is bad for these reasons that may or may not be true.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's very much about the product that you're trying to solve for, and blockchain technology, it's so interesting. One day I hope that it just is not mentioned at all in the product. It's like me asking, hey, what kind of database do you run on? Is that, Elastic, or is that, Postgres? Like no one really cares. And so that's kind of, what you're asking when somebody's building on top of a blockchain technology. And so I hope like in the future, we'll get to that point where it'll just be running in the background efficiently, and we can solve, newer challenges.
Just to build for a second on what Tammy just said, so there's been an interesting progression. This all started in 2008 or 9 with Bitcoin, but I think the most recent wave of blockchain companies like a Stellar or an SDF or like something like an Algorand or like an Avalanche, like this is basically technology that was invented 40 years ago in the distributed systems community that's just being made practical. And it used to be like you needed one bank to run this database in like one secure location to say what's on the ledger. And then I think Bitcoin comes along and people realize that's a very naive way of looking at the world. And so now, how do you run a system where like 100, 1,000 people can all agree upon what should be in the database? And that's actually a very old and, dare I say, solved problem in computer science. But what's new now is that people are willing to kind of apply that technology to things that they care about. And so, in this sense, it's like, the infrastructure, it's not a buzzword at all. It's just like, just applying this great technology to an important problem.
Thank you. Tammy, your company has a product called Stronghold USD. It's a dollar-backed stablecoin, and wanted to have you talk a bit about what the role of that product is within the kind of greater kind of ecosystem of your company, and what potential does that particular product, Stronghold USD, have to move outside of kind of the Stronghold company context?
Sure. Very simply put, Stronghold USD is an asset-backed stable coin, if you will. That's US dollar put on the blockchain, like very simply. And what's really good about these blockchains databases, right, is that you can move this value around. And to my point previously, how it will live outside of Stronghold is today, I really would again like it to fall in the background. It's just a way for people to transfer value in a vehicle, the US dollar, that people are familiar with. So when you go, you have your mobile wallet or you have it loaded onto a credit card, you just go and you buy a cup of coffee. No one has to, know what the price of it is that day. It just is the dollar. It's just that simple. So I think that just putting, traditional things on new technology is actually how we're going to get mass adoption, because people don't want to change their user behavior. So hopefully, like more people will be using it. People use it today to trade in and out of different assets and currencies. But hopefully, one day soon, it will just be a US dollar in your wallet, in your mobile wallet, a digital wallet, and you won't even know it's Stronghold USD.
Awesome. Yeah. There are a couple of questions that are related to regulation, so I thought it might be helpful to throw these out here to the panel, and to the extent that it might help entrepreneurs in the audience who are thinking about integrating blockchain or crypto into their products. Your context might be helpful here. One question is, what is your view on operating in New York State compared to other jurisdictions given the legislative framework? The other is, how does your technology deal with the Office of Foreign Assets Control and regulations like the NYDFS cybersecurity regulation? This isn't legal advice, and so I would ask that you, as much as you can say, but most importantly, just the general context of how you view those regulations.
I guess I'm best suited to answer that. Yeah. Was that an audience question?
It was.
That was a really good question. Who answered that? Very good question. Our stance is that we don't operate in New York State, So sorry. Sorry, BitLicense. So that's like pretty short and simple, but you know, we find, you know, we find it very costly and hard to operate in this state, and hopefully, you know, what was intended for the BitLicense to come along and make it easier for companies such as myself to operate in this state has actually made it harder. So hopefully that will change in the future. Hopefully they're going to realize that, and it will change in the future. And in terms of OFAC, yes, we definitely comply with OFAC compliance, and it would be just like any other fintech company. You know, we KYC everybody. The thing about Stronghold USD specifically is that it is safer than cash. This is actually what I pitched to like the chief compliance officers at the bank, and the reason why that is that we KYC every single person that not only buys or redeems Stronghold USD, but who holds it. So imagine if you had like a piece of cash, and you know it came from you know it came from your bank. You know it came from the bank, but you don't know like if that dollar has been in the hands of you know a terrorist or you know a money launderer like two exchanges ago. And so my argument to a compliance person would be, well, with something like Stronghold USD, we KYC everyone. We know everyone that holds that asset, and we can revoke it, or we can pre-qualify that transaction before it even happens. And so we can screen, back to your question about OFAC, we can pre-screen somebody before they even can obtain that asset. So it's actually, you know, the beauty about I think the technologies that we work with is that it has regulatory technology built into it. It is safer than cash. You know who's holding it at all times, so you know it makes it much easier for someone like us to comply with those sanctions. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad New York makes it so hard. I mean, it's just there are other states too, right? It's like there's another one that has pretty restrictive BitLicense type laws. Anyway, but as a company that's like based in New York, it doesn't really matter. But as a company that wants its New York, you know, customers to have a good experience, it's really too bad that it seems like it's so onerous to move into different asset classes, right? I mean, I think what can you trade in New York? Is just like Ethereum and Bitcoin and basically nothing else.
I don't even think you can do that. You can't do that.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of like what the exchanges have to go through to get.
Right. And I think practically speaking, you just can't buy Stellar Lumens in New York. It's just, we're bummed about that. We wish we were otherwise, but we got to pick our battles.
Vanessa's regulation, the likelihood that a potential investment, that regulation might hinder that. Is that a big concern for you and your team?
Depending on the investment type, but we utilize all resources that we have at Ripple, from compliance, legal, finance, accounting. Tax is my best buddy. Shout out to him. So we not only use that for diligence, but we also try and help answer anyone's questions once we've made the investment, because we are so early with a lot of these. And Ripple is, of course, compliant and does have a BitLicense, and works closely with regulators to have good relationships, because we would like to see the U.S. win and be a good home for innovation for blockchain technologies.
Yeah, regulation. There is a question about stablecoins. I want to make sure that I find it. The question, can't find it exactly, but it was essentially, how do you weigh the pros and cons of kind of integrating kind of a floated cryptocurrency versus a stable coin kind of in a consumer-facing app? So in your wallet product that you released, your salad may cost $10 one day and $7 the next. Did you think about stable coins as a way to mitigate that?
Yeah, it's just a feature we haven't built yet, but we do certainly have that on our roadmap. There is a little bit of a risk involved with stable coins that you don't have with a Bitcoin or like a Lumen, and that is, there's a counterparty now. There's a bank that could go under, and then at least fiat-backed stable coins. And so I guess the other one is like algorithmic-backed stable coins, which I don't know if I buy that will actually hold up on a run on the bank. I don't know what people's thought on that is, but so maybe there's like a nice hybrid that combines both aspects of those categories of stablecoins. But I think it's great that there's so much innovation in this area, and that's what people want. But it could be the technology isn't totally ready yet. But we're going to integrate it into our app either way, and so I think obviously like Stronghold USD, like Anchor USD, there are like USDs and euros on the Stellar network that we can use for salads that might be better than Lumens. That's obviously part of that's the master plan, for sure.
Awesome. You two, Tammy and Max, you were riffing on this kind of conceptual idea of what would have been had Stronghold been around a few years ago. So Max founded, before his time in crypto, you don't mind if I share this, do you?
No, it's good.
He founded a company that saved my life in high school, SparkNotes. So if you made it through AP English on SparkNotes, you have Max to thank for that. And they were riffing on what SparkNotes could have looked like in a kind of post-blockchain, post-crypto world. And I would love if you kind of shared a little bit about that conversation that you all had.
Yeah, and at this point, I think there's a lot of agreement on this idea that the traditional model of you have a publisher showing ads and somebody browsing the internet who's going to fund the publisher by looking at enough ads, it just seems so wrong on so many different levels. I mean, there's the privacy and security downside of seeing ads all the time. There's also the fact that, SparkNotes was one of two kind of ad-supported businesses I was a part of, and in both cases, you get to this point where like the ads are adversarial. They're really going after the users in ways that you as the publisher don't want, because and they have to get the user's attention. And wouldn't it be better if instead of the ad making the company 0.001 cent and making the ad network another 0.001 cent, that maybe the user can just give the money directly to the publisher, like 0.1 cent, and that's like everyone would win in that equation. And the problem has always been the technology hasn't been there, right? And so you couldn't do it on the Visa network because the transaction cost is like 20 cents. So how are you going to move like 0.01 cent? But Tammy was saying that she knows of a company that's using Stronghold to do this right now, and that's like a real utopia, I think, relative to what we have now, where people want to read an article, they pay a small amount, and now everyone has a better experience with that system, and so I really, really hope we can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just briefly introduce the company they're discussing. It's a company called Coil. The CTO of Ripple spun out last year. His name's Stefan Thomas, and he's the CEO of this company. And it is initial use case for Interledger, which is an open source protocol. I'll explain in a bit. But web monetization, there should be a way to be able to stream small amounts of payments for things that you're consuming on the web. So if you're watching a video, or if you would like to go through SparkNotes, go through the first few pages, why buy the whole book if you could just look through a few pages of the book first? And there's many, many ways you could think about doing this. And so the Coil is an application that is running on Interledger, and if there are publishers out there that have this turned on, then, and I am a consumer that has the Coil extension, I could visit your website and I could start streaming small amounts of cryptocurrency to you as I'm consuming the content you've created. And they recently launched a blog platform, and Tammy's been talking to them a bit. I'll let you.
Yeah, they are paid, basically Coil, it's integrated and uses Stronghold USD. So, or the publisher, we do their publisher payouts. So the idea is, because these streaming payments are enabled, and it's really cool. Like, you should go on the internet and actually see it. It's like literally, like the visualization of it, just like streaming payments. You see like the numbers, the zeros and ones like go up, so, or down rather. And it's the first time, I actually think it's like, it's micro payments, but it's like even smaller than that. It's like nano payments. It's like 10,
1/10,000th
like
of a
one
penny.
10,000th of a penny
Yeah.
is able to be like streamed, and it's really cool. And I think it's super disruptive because not only does it give the user an ad-free experience, think about the publisher, like a digital publisher these days. The time that it takes for an ad network to pay a publisher is net 60. So if you got to think about, they say publishing is a hard world. It's dying, right? So, all of that working capital for the net 60 can be used in real time. Like you can get your payments in net 1 into your bank account and using it to pay writers, pay employees, they keep the lights on. So I actually think it's solves a huge problem on both the publisher and the viewer side.
I think it's worse than net 60. I think it's like net. I mean,
Yeah.
when we used to be in this business, it used to be net 90, and you'd only see like 60% of what you thought you were going to get. And there'd be this like, how did you come up with that number? And they'd say like, well, maybe in these like 20% of cases, like the ad didn't load, and there's like 10% of people using ad blockers. It's probably like way higher than that now. And so like, there's no way in which you could audit that. It was just like you had to take their word for it. And so it just wasn't the way to run a business, and probably has only gotten worse. We haven't looked at it recently, thankfully.
The beauty of Interledger also, which this app is built on, is that you can pay in any currency you want.
Yeah.
So if someone today it's Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP, but there are more plugins being built so that you could have more currencies added. So you could even have Stellar at some point. And if Max is Stellar loyal and I am an XRP loyalist, then I will just stream payments in XRP and it will pay out in lumens to him. And if you're a Bitcoin maximalist and holding Ether, there you go. I'll be paying in ETH and you will receive in Bitcoin. And so that's what we're building on and making investments on the infrastructure side as well as on the application side like Hoyle.
Yeah. And this is what I actually really love about this technology. If you look at traditional payments, there's like about 9 trillion, yes, with a T, daily that moves through traditional rails. And if you look at crypto world, it's 80 billion daily. So 80 billion to 9 trillion, 80 billion in that case is kind of like a rounding error. And that's like 80 billion collectively of all of the, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the Ripples and Stellars of the world. So what I really like specifically about Interledger, not only does it allow you to have micropayments, but it allows you to connect all of those ledgers together so you can actually combine that 80 billion so you even have a chance of competing that $9 trillion a day incumbent, traditional rail incumbent. So basically what it does, it's like Jon Snow and Daenerys, and they are getting everybody together on the blockchain side so they can go fight the White Walkers. And that's what Interledger is.
And everything goes really well after that for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a question about transaction fees for the fiat on and off ramps. Like the idea that a lot of the kind of efficiencies that you might see with cross-border transactions kind of go out the window when you pay a 5 to 10% fee to convert back to fiat currency. And each of you have kind of found ways around that to kind of pass savings on to customers. So thoughts on what it would take for us to be able to get around the high fees that it takes to kind of come back into the fiat world?
That seems really high to me. Is that really what it is? I mean, Coinbase, it's like, it's a lot less than that, isn't it?
It used to be like 1.49%, but then you have to do wires and whatnot. But the answer to that is like more people use wallets such as Keybase,
Yeah, just have a balance. I mean.
And then pay with it, right? And transact with it. And merchants have to transact with it.
So not going back to fiat is the answer.
I mean, you can't rely on that answer to bootstrap the system is the problem. I mean, I think to to get these technologies off the ground, I think you have to make these incremental steps, and that seems like an important incremental step, just to have like a cheaper Western Union where the money comes off the system right away. I'm just surprised that the number is 5 to 10%, because that seems very high.
This was particularly in the context of sending money to Russia, I'm sure the same can be said about many other developing countries. So sure, cheaper Coinbase, but across the world, I'm sure this isn't super high. There's another question regarding the work that potentially Starbucks, any view on what Starbucks is doing with digital payments, Facebook, global coin, any thoughts on kind of the corporate crypto movement, so to speak?
I think it's great for the industry. It's just validating that that's the way the world is going, and there's more money being poured into supporting these technologies, and when that happens, that also helps foster innovation and create supporting mechanisms for those newer companies, and also being able to rope in and create alignment with regulators and other lawmakers. So I think it's a good thing. Actual execution on the product could be questionable, but just the fact that they're getting into the game is nice.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the global coin thing, I think, is really interesting. And there are it seems like 3 or 4 other companies who are trying to go after the same product. And I think maybe mobile coin is an example. There's one called CELO, which is going after the same thing. And was there a third I can't think of? Anyway, it'll come to me later. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, people in tech would say like, oh, Zuckcoin is going to be like Google Plus, right? It's like, that's not Facebook's like DNA to do this. But I don't know. I think it could be they'll just dominate, because they have like WhatsApp is obviously like a 1 billion user platform, and like to just inject something into that's like, this little token people pass back and forth that has money. I think that could be a very compelling product, and I hope it doesn't like squash all this other innovation, because it would be too bad if Facebook won this whole business. I don't know, just as from the perspective of someone who works in startups and knows other people who works in startups, but we'll see. I don't know. It's like they have like, the advantage of incumbency is just huge. Amazon and Google and Facebook. So it's certainly something to keep your eye on for sure. I don't think it's going to be a Google Plus, in other words.
Google Wave.
Yeah.
I also, echoing what both of them said, I think it's very good for the industry, and that we're moving the right path, and whoever, it's going to get potentially the regulators a little more comfortable with the industry, and more value flowing through these types of technologies. But I envision a world where there's going to be multiple ledgers. There's going to be multiple ecosystems, and they're going to support different ledgers. So I think that we'll be seeing a lot of fragmentation. It's pretty fragmented now, but we'll probably see more fragmentation in probably the next 5 years. But then, say in 10 years, it'll probably be a little more streamlined, where, things will start combining, entities will start combining, and there'll be some, there'll still be multiple players, but not like, hundreds of thousands of them that we have today.
Awesome. Would you mind if I shared the Friendster MySpace?
Sure.
No.
Yeah, go for it.
It's a hot take coming.
Oh, it is.
In a 3-year-old article at this point, a long time ago, my friend Tammy said that Bitcoin is Friendster, Ethereum would be MySpace, and Stellar would be Facebook. And each of the folks here have kind of taken a different approach to figuring out which kind of blockchain or blockchains they would place their bets on early. And there's a kind of combination between maybe choosing a winner and or kind of investing in the ecosystem at large and assuming some amount of interoperability. both of you all kind of early started with Stellar. You are investing, you're a Ripple employee, but are kind of blockchain agnostic. But just want to open up for you all to share your thoughts on the kind of current state of the blockchain ecosystem and how you potentially see interoperability coming into play.
Yeah, so Interledger is our view for moving value cross-chain. I do look at other forms, other horizontals that could also serve and integrate with other layer ones. So I've been looking at a lot of layer 2 solutions that could help with either scaling, privacy, or security on any base layers. I believe identity is going to be a big part of that as well. If you want people to have a decentralized identifier and then being able to interact with these different protocols. And there has to be more, like I mentioned, the smart contracts platform, right? If there could be more smart contracts infrastructure to be able to connect to other chains or to create other ways to service new verticals. And so I'm taking a look at the value side with Interledger and finding ways that we could work with existing companies to integrate to it if it's something that they want to do. And the other topics like identity are much more like further down the road. It's a very tough one, as I think Max knows. And there was one more that I was going to add in there. But and all the layer 2 solutions are more about finding ways to have the different chains talk to each other, and there might be some off-chain computation associated with that. There might be some other ways that people are creating new ways for people to transact or increase the number of transactions they could have on these base chains. And so I'm looking at all of those different ways so that we can sort of not have to wait for transactions to settle for a long time, or not have to wait for any sort of security risk associated with transacting on these base chains.
There are two kind of product or two kind of product-based questions that I would love for you to expound on that are here in the chat. One is about the employee payroll space, and maybe you can even kind of expand that out to kind of HR, compliance, maybe blockchain as a solution for that. And there's also a question about sports and entertainment, and potentially we can expand that to kind of security tokens at large, whether that be for ownership shares or what have you. Are there any things maybe in the sports space, entertainment space, compliance, HR that excites you as it relates to blockchain?
So payroll versus tokenizing securities of sports teams? Yeah, I just want to make sure I got both questions.
We got 10 minutes left, and I want to get to as many questions as I can.
Payroll. I've seen some people pitch things in the space. I'm not doing anything with that directly right now, but there are benefits, and some people at crypto companies are getting paid in crypto. Those that were smart enough to do it very early made out well. Anyone else can answer that. Tokenizing sports teams or any sort of associated brand or asset. What does it mention? I think.
Well, yeah, I'll read the question. Do you see sports and entertainment strategizing in arenas for ticket shares or tickets for coins as a better concept for new payments?
So this is like if I have a season ticket and I want to be able to like split that with other people?
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I mean, people are trying to find different ways. In tokenizing securities, there's a whole world of people saying we can tokenize real estate, we can tokenize these assets, we can tokenize a share for a season ticket, and then we could all end up passing it. I mean, I'm not looking to that future right now, but there are things around the space that are interesting. And I invested in a company called Securitize, which has made it possible to make the tokens compliant at the actual token level, so that if I'm going to be, the popular example is if there is an issuance for just international investors and an American investor wanted to purchase that token, it'll be programmed at the token level that I won't be able to purchase it because it'll be on an exchange and they would know that I would not be able to purchase it because it's a Reg S.
That's awesome.
Do you guys payroll?
I think payroll's interesting, but only in the remittance sector. Payroll is interesting because payroll kind of makes it possible if you have a wallet within your payroll system. Imagine if you had a wallet in Gusto. Does everybody know what Gusto is? It's this payroll SaaS platform. If you had a wallet inside of a payroll processing, then you could actually shoot off payments to say, my mom in Taiwan, and then my electricity bill, and then my AT&T bill. That I think I actually find payroll very interesting because it's at the point in which a large transaction that everybody waits for every 2 weeks or every month. Everybody knows when the paycheck is coming, right? So that's that transaction of the month that everybody knows is coming in, and it's automated, and you have to log in every once in a while, and there's a lot of things that you can do programmatically, when you are in your own payroll portal. So I think that applications that do use this type of technology can, if used properly, can automate transactions that you would do normally at a bank. Invest in your 401k, invest in, put X amount into savings, put this into a 529. That all can be done at the payroll level.
Great. This will be likely our last question, inspired by Anonymous, who asks, what's one important fact that we developers have to ensure while building payment applications through payment through decentralized applications? Another question related here, or what general tips might you have for idea stage entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs who are looking to build blockchain startups? Tips, any last tips for developers and or entrepreneurs?
I would say solve a real world problem first, and provide a useful experience for your users. And that needs to be the primary focus of the problem that you're trying to solve. And if blockchain helps you achieve whatever problem that you're trying to solve, then feel free to use it. But even though I do build on the blockchain, I would say that not everything needs to be on the blockchain. So I think first things first is just to make sure that you're solving that problem. Yeah.
I guess I might mention a little bit about our experience about building a consumer-facing app, especially with crypto. And I'm not sure if this is what the question was, but I could kind of steer it in that direction. It's a pretty high bar these days to get a good crypto app out the door. And if possible, being mobile only would be a way to somewhat lower the bar, just so that way you don't have to be on all different platforms. And part of why it's it's harder to build a crypto app than it's a regular app is that in most, if you look at a Facebook app on your phone, usually the server is doing a lot of the work, and in a crypto app, especially where people own the keys, that can't be done, and so now the client needs to do a lot of the work, and that unfortunately is there are 6 or so platforms that clients run on, and now you have to program to all 6 of those platforms. So that's a real challenge, and also just this is true of any startup product nowadays, and that is people are used to really polished apps, and anything that doesn't feel snappy and that doesn't look good is likely not going to be used. So in that sense, the bar is also really high. So it's just we've been surprised at how long it takes us to build the smallest little feature, and it's crypto is an extra layer on top that makes it even harder. So I guess maybe the advice would be as much as possible, mobile only is maybe a way to simplify the problem.
I mean, you're seeing 2 hardworking entrepreneurs in this space that have been doing this for years now. So there's a lot of solving a real world problem is helpful, having conviction about what you're building and why and with what technology. is always useful. I find that some people get excited about it, but then don't have the reason as to why they're using a certain protocol, and it's just useful to have that from the earlier stages. We also invest in, like early researchers coming out of some top universities that have long-term 10-year views, and then we'll meet people that are repeat founders that have just focused on one piece of the market in the globe, that are focused on something that's highly desirable for that asset and just building the best product possible. So it could vary.
Awesome. Thank you all for these wonderful questions that guided our conversation, and I want to thank our awesome panelists for everything that they contributed. Another round of applause for. Thank you.